up, my Livish family? So my mom watches my feed, and she said that on a lot of my videos that I've been cut off. So I'm coming in too early. There's a lag or something like that. So hopefully I waited long enough time to begin here so that you can catch everything that I'm saying. So again, good morning. Just got done doing a biometric screener for myself. Not impressed with my results, so I need to go do some research. I've been, working out every day, eating much better, much cleaner, for over a month now, and still looks like I have higher levels of cholesterol and some other things on there. So need to look at that and get that dialed in. Have to do some more research. So that's an update on me. The topic that I want to talk about today is, passive leadership. That may not be the right term, but basically a comment came across LinkedIn that I felt compelled to respond to, and it was basically a corporate professional talking about one-on-ones and how people should run from companies or managers or leaders that put everything back on you. And so in this context, this scenario, it was basically the person had a real problem that they did not know how to solve, did not have any clue of how to go about solving this problem. And when they came to their superior, manager, leader, higher up to address this situation and get some guidance, some instruction, they were left with questions that said, what would you do in this situation? Or, what do you think would be the best next steps to solve this problem? Which are, in my opinion, very good questions. I think those inherently are not the problem. Help your team members, your mentees, your staff, your employees come to realizations on their own is extremely powerful, and I believe in it immensely. It's a thing that I have learned, that empowering others to make decisions, especially difficult decisions, without feeling like they need to have approval or clarity from a superior or someone else around the scenario is very empowering. It's very enlightening as well. And so asking those questions to start the conversation should be for the purpose of discovery. Does it appear, does it come across that this person is really lost, or they're just looking for the approval to move forward in making a decision? And a lot of times what I have seen, and I also see coaching programs out there pushing this so hard to just leave it to that person to make those decisions. So the person telling you that they have a real problem in a real scenario that they can't figure out, to leave those people to decide for themselves. So my issue with this, my problem with this, just leaving someone to figure out these things on their own without giving guidance or empowering them or clarity around a decision-making process, is very ineffective. And what I think it is a lot is it is leadership guiding their lack of knowledge or ability to give clarity or direction towards an effective next steps or sequence of actions to solve a problem. Instead of doing that, they just put it back on the staff member, and that staff member leaves the meeting feeling more guilty that they didn't know the answer, or more confused about what they should do, and less secure in their own value as a team member to take action and make decisions. And so what happens is a lot of leaders or managers are asking the questions, but not giving any direction or empowerment, when that is really an opportune time to give that guidance and empowerment to that team member, that employee, that staff member, mentee, whatever the situation may be, to empower them to know that they have the ability to make those decisions. And in a lot of these scenarios, they don't have the authority to make the decision. So they are literally asking for permission to move forward. So although the discovery is good and helping people talk through something and think through a process so that they can come up with a decision, and I'll give you an example of one of these questions. I've had somebody say multiple times, if you had a gun to your head, what choice would you make? So I think this is good to get someone to come up with a decision, but ultimately isn't empowering the person to think logically and rationally about the scenario to come up with a good and effective next step or action to take to solve a problem or overcome an obstacle or challenge. And so what happens a lot is you create toxicity in the work environment because you have a lot of managers that just don't know. They don't know how to guide, they don't know how to lead, and they ultimately don't know what to do. And so they don't want to take responsibility for giving direction to someone to take an action in fear of the repercussions of the consequences if that action is not successful or does not turn out ideally in the view of other people. And so this trickles down from the top. And because people at each level, unless they're at the very top, are afraid to make decisions, then they will put that on the next person beneath them. I hate that word, but beneath them in the hierarchy to take the responsibility for that. So they have what we call diffusion of responsibility. So if they give it to somebody else and they don't do it well, they can say, well, that person didn't do it well. Now I'll go ahead and make a decision moving forward that I think is better. When in the first place, they should have had a long discovery with a person. And I say long because, I mean thorough discovery with the person who says that they have a problem or a challenge. It may not be. It may just be lack of clarity around the scenario. And ultimately, which I think is in most cases, lack of understanding of their level of permission to be able to make situations like these, which is a big problem, I think, in leadership is, they expect you to operate at a high level, but then they don't give you clarity on how far you can go and what level of decision making you can make and what those thresholds are. And that's a big mistake. And so what happens is when you do this in combination and compounding with the fact that people are not clear on what all they can do and what parameters they have to be able to make decisions, they continue to come and ask you questions. And then they're met with a manager or a leader who doesn't give them guidance or direction or clarity around the situation and clarity around the permissions that they have to be able to move forward. And so if you continue to lead like this, you will continue to have an inferior staff, one that does not take action in fear of repercussion because they don't know if they have the permission to take these actions. You also won't create a team that feels comfortable making decisions by logically processing those things in their brain based off their experience to be able to move forward and overcome these challenges. And then ultimately you will have a staff that is at the mercy of you. And when leaders passively leave decision-making scenarios to people that are not clear on what decisions to make, people make decisions from a place of scarcity and not confidence. And then they are always looking for the punch, the blindside punch that says, oh, well, that decision was terrible. Man, we really question your judgment here. which again is another poor practice. So all in all, I do not agree with passive leadership. I think leadership should do good discovery. I think they should do role playing. I think they should walk people through those scenarios, and they should ask questions like, what would you do? If no one else was around and you were the only one that can make the decision, what decision do you think would be the best for you and the company in this scenario, or you and the company and the customer or the client in this scenario? And see what they say. And then confirm that they are certain and committed that if they take that action, they will own it 100% and be responsible and accountable for all the results that come from that and the consequences that come from taking that action. And if they are not 100% certain, then there is where I believe empowerment, maybe some further discovery, encouragement, and then clarity around your value for them to be able to make these decisions, your trust in them that they know the right decision to make. And then once you have got 100% certainty from them and they have 100% clarity from you to go make those decisions, empower them to go make that decision. And then say, the next time you come up with a situation or a problem like this, I trust that you can make that decision. And if you do that, and you consistently do that, and you genuinely give them permission and trust them to make a decision, then you have to take 100% accountability and commitment for that as well, because you can't go out there and tell people to make decisions and then you chastise them for every decision that they make. That is counterproductive. So when managers come in and they won't give you an answer, they just keep asking questions. Well, what would you do? What do you think the best scenario was? And they just keep down that path. But you just keep getting more frustrated and confused and lack clarity in those scenarios. Then you need to ask your leader. You need clarity. You need to let them know, I need clarity. At this point in the decision-making process, I am not clear about what decision I would make. It would be helpful to me if you would give me some direction and empowerment based on your experience, what the best decision would be from your perspective and why you think that's the best perspective. Those are the questions that you need to be asking, because you are responsible to at least go to that level to make sure that you are clear with your leader. But leaders are then, in my opinion, they are obligated as a leader to give clarity around what your level of permissions are, first and foremost. Two, to ensure that the person asking about how to solve a problem is clear on how they would go about solving a problem, whether that's people, whether that's services, whether that's financial, whether that's action steps, whether that's a mentality. They need to be clear on those things, and you as a leader should be clear that they are clear before you push that responsibility on them, because you are pushing that on them without getting them to accept it. Employees not accepting responsibility is a quick way to get employees who have animosity towards you and make poor decisions, or just don't make decisions at all, which ultimately can hurt you, the company, the clients, the staff or team member themselves, etc. So have real genuine conversations with people. Empower people to make decisions. Don't be angry when people keep coming to you with questions because you're not empowering them to make decisions. Now, here is the other caveat of that, and I see this a lot. You have middlemen who is at the mercy of a leader at the top that does not make decisions. They operate this way. They leave their team in confusion. They are contradictory of their own messages, their own non-negotiables, where they will say, we only do it this way, we only do it that way, and that is the only way that we do it, and people continue to make those decisions, and then they get chastised every time they make one of those decisions without any justification, without any clarity, without any discovery as to educating that person on why this is viewed as a bad decision or why the results were not desired, and how we can go about being in line with what my non-negotiables are and the way in which we want things done, and why this didn't exactly meet that. So if you are that type of leader, one, shame on you. You need to grow. And again, we all need to grow. If you are an owner that has leaders like that and you are not checking on them, you are not verifying that they are leading down appropriately, professionally, effectively, then shame on you as well. because that is where the difficulty comes in, because you have a middle manager who is supporting their team in the best way they know how to move forward because they have been given the authority for it. And then you have a leader who comes in and that is a senior above that person and consistently contradicting the action steps that are given out, the processes that are put in place, the ideology behind why we do the things is being contradicted from the top. So if that is the case, then there is a lack of alignment. And this is where that toxic environment comes from. This is where that lack of clarity around what to do next is. This is where may I please, can I repeatedly comes up, and you have to have more meetings and more meetings and more meetings to discuss meetings, because people are not clear on how to move forward without being chastised. If you work in an environment like that, it's the top, not the bottom. It's not the staff. It's the managers, and then ultimately, if the manager you see is doing a great job and he is leading his people, then it is the person that is over those managers. It is the top hierarchy. And I will say this until I'm blue in the face, and I will say this forever. I've had so many experience in different verticals at so many different levels, from the ground up to the senior level management to partnership level leadership and management. You always start at the top first. I don't care if you're an owner, if the guy makes you hundreds of millions of dollars, start at the top first, because that trickle down will absolutely kill your attrition in your business. It will create a revolving door. It will create unhappy employees. It will create unproductive employees. It will create a environment where people operate in scarcity, and so will ultimately drive up the requirement of pay for them to be able to suffer through that environment. So if you want to affect the bottom line and increase your profit margins, have a good environment with good leaders who are clear, have clear and defined rules and processes that need to be followed and adhered to, and make sure that everybody understands what they are and why they are important, and check in on your leaders often. Make sure that your leaders are not abusing their power, because most of them are. I see a lot of leaders that should not be leaders. They are good technicians. They're a good salesperson. They're a good, financial guy. They're a good marketing guy, but they should not be in charge of people. Let them do their job well, but don't put them in charge of people if they are not a good leader. That is a very quick way to create a lot of turnover, a revolving door, a toxic environment, and ultimately will affect your bottom line. Just because someone earns you a lot of money doesn't mean he's not costing you a lot of money, or she is costing you a lot of money. So pay attention to the consequences that are happening from the actions that people are taking, or the inaction that people don't take. And again, back to the main topic here, leaders not empowering others and giving guidance is inaction. And if, in fact, their job is to create action, then taking action by empowering and adding clarity to those one-on-ones where people are having problems is absolutely crucial to business, and that will never be non-existent ever in my reality. And if you think that you don't have to answer those type of scenarios or empower people or do those discoveries and give people guidance in your role, then you should not be over people or in charge of people, period. Stay lavish. Have a great day.